on the air.
You know what that means. Hey, so Doug, yeah, we were talking about League Pass.
We were.
And the $50.
You're upset.
You hear Nick and I. Well, yeah, $50 more. I like the in arena feed, but you're not.
It's about that money. It's about that bottom dollar.
Yeah, no kidding. I also feel like if there's a game I want to see, I can just a la carte it, right? That's an option now.
Yeah, I mean, how many preseason games do you really want to watch? I think that what the NBA is really trying to do. That's what I'm saying. I think what the NBA is really trying to do is get you to ask yourself that question, like how dedicated are you to the NBA?
I'm super dedicated, but I mean, I'm talking about like in season. You know, that $50 extra to.
I think if you pay $50 for a preseason, then you're too dedicated.
Preseason. No. I'm talking about the $50 you can pay to get the in-arena feed.
Oh, I see.
And then you don't have to see the commercials. But that's not the same thing as skipping commercials. Like I have Hulu with no commercials, but that goes straight content to content. Like it skips the commercials. You still have to sit through the NBA timeouts. Now, if they're going to remove the NBA timeouts, I'll give you $50.
Sorry, I'm still sleepy.
That's all right.
I missed your point. Nick, what do you think?
I mean, it's funny that they recognize how popular like the arena feeds are, because they it actually is fun to see people acting ridiculous or just to see the games. But like, man, if it's $50, they better have fixed just the massive issues that they have typically every single night. Like depending on how you're watching it, like where you're streaming League Pass through, it's gonna crash at least once a night. So, I mean, if they fixed, that, then the $50, you might be able to justify it. But still, that's a lot of money.
That, or if I'm paying $50, I want to be able to catch a T-shirt through the TV screen.
Now, that would be impressive. That'd be for what is that? Hold on, 75. Nick. You can't just you can't. What is that mug? You can't just put the mug up and then put it away. The mustache mug. My goodness, that's beautiful.
All of these are like gifts.
All of these are available online. NickDiddick.com. Check the store out. Quit making money off the show. None of us are allowed to do that. None of us are allowed to make any money off of this show. All right, let's do this.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
This is Locked On Hornets, your daily podcast on the Charlotte Hornets and the NBA. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Search Locked On to get podcast on the NBA, the NFL, and fantasy sports as well. I'm Doug Branson. We are coming to you live from the Gittimer.com studios in BEA, beautiful uptown Charlotte, heart of the Queen City. I'm joined by my panel of Hornets experts. We've got from Raleigh and at thehive.com, Nick Denning, rocking his mustache mug. Let's see that. Let's see that bad boy one more time. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that thing.
That's it. That's just throw up the mug. That's my introduction.
That's your thing now. It's your meme. Yeah. All right. From the mean streets of Cotswold, David Walker. David, what's going on?
No mustache on my face, no mustache on my mug.
Keeping it clean.
That's right, dude.
I want to start with this tweet from our good friend Rich there in beautiful England. And it says, hope you are riding the hype train hard today. #Monk. Yeah, Monk had a big game last night. Really a third straight big game. He's had a big preseason. Definitely a great introduction for fans who are already excited to see him. We're going to be talking a lot about Malik Monk. We've got a full recap of last night's game, the first home preseason game for the Charlotte Hornets. Plus, we're going to be talking about these changes to the broadcast team, the Fox Sports Television broadcast team. A couple of changes, including one to fan favorite Steph Reddy So we'll talk about those later in the show. But first, got to mention download Overcast. Use that as your podcast app. And if you do, then make sure you give us a star. That helps us move up the rankings. If you use iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Again, all of those help us very much. And congrats to our good friend Carson, who went to the game last night, courtesy of our Patreon page, patreon.com/LOH. It's a great way to support the show. All right, the Hornets played in Charlotte for the very first time this preseason, and things looked very similar to when they were out on the road. Guys, we had some sloppy offense. We had a bad first-half defense, and then the reserves played against each other in the fourth quarter, pulled things close at the end after a 17-5 run, gave them a 97-96 lead. Boston then answered with a 12-3 run, and the Hornets fell short on the comeback for the second straight game. Final score, 108-100. Boston, Malik Monk finished with 21 points. That's a preseason high for him on 18 shots. Dwight Howard added 12 points, 6 rebounds in only 22 minutes of play. We'll start with you, David, since your name is on the screen. What did you see in this one?
Well, right off the top, I thought you saw the Hornets missing those guys on the wing, especially Batum and MKG and Lamb. I mean, the Celtics came out on fire. So, I mean, if they're going to shoot like that from three to start the game and then really throughout the whole game, they're going to be tough to beat anyway. But that was the big thing for me. I mean, they were locked in. You could tell they were using this as a legit tune-up for their first game next week against Cleveland. That's the mentality I saw in that team. Brad Stevens started his guys that were going to play. And so they were coming out ready to go. And the Hornets just were not at full strength. And also, I mean, the Celtics, look, that's going to be one of the best teams in the East. The Hornets are a notch below. So it was a tough time for them last night, especially not at full strength.
Nick, what did you say?
Well, I'm just wondering if we're ready to just make is Malik Monk a first ballot or second ballot Hall of Famer at this point?
Oh, that's the choo-choo. You're riding the hype train.
No, this is my first. Like, I thought about this afterwards. It's just refreshing. Just speaking strictly about the rookies, we can talk about like what was good and bad, but it's just nice to have rookies that know how to score the ball in their rookie.
Yeah.
You know, like the other parts of the game where they need to develop. Like, you know, but just. It's just a little refreshing. It's nice.
Well, it's nice in any season for the Charlotte Hornets, but especially this one where, you know, the depth is already being tested. Like, I can't imagine where the Hornets would be at this moment in time in preseason if both Malik Monk and Dwayne Bacon were not coming along as quickly as they are. Clifford commented, we'll talk about Bacon here in a moment, but commented on how comfortable, how steady was the word he used, that he looked with those starters, and that's a high compliment for any rookie to get that call to start this game, and to get some praise from the head coach in that first start. I think that's a big deal for the Hornets, they're going to need everybody at this point. Want to mention real quick before we got much more from this game ahead. But it's Thursday and the Panthers are playing tonight, so make sure you are listening to Locked On Panthers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by Bill Rossetti. Smart guy, knows his football. Check it out. Whatever you use to get your podcast, just search Locked On Panthers. All right, guys, Boston blitzed the Hornets with 3-pointers through 3 quarters. The Celtics were 60% from beyond the arc. When asked pregame about the game plan against Boston, scouting Boston, Clifford said this: "With preseason being different, we're almost doing just more concepts. I'm not as concerned about taking away coverages and stuff like that. We've got to get good at things, and with a shortened preseason." So when you look at some of these stats, you know, you look, they finished, let's see, where did they finish from 3-point, the Boston Celtics? 50%. Yeah, when you see stuff like that,
pretty good.
It's really good. And guys that aren't traditionally good 3-point shooters like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were knocking them down as well. But you can't really be all concerned about that at this point in the preseason, right?
I don't think so. I mean, especially since we mentioned Tatum last night, they're really not having to worry about him from 3.
Yeah,
so good scouting report on our part.
Frank missed a couple of closeouts on Tatum, and he wasn't worried about him as well, and he dropped a few.
Oh man, man, the big guys for the Hornets were really left on an island a couple times throughout this whole game. Really, even late by like guys like Shane Larkin was getting to the basket easy. But yeah, man, I mean, they were just on it last night, and it is preseason, but that is one of the things that's starting to worry me a little bit, guys, is just the fact that has not seemed to be shored up. And again, they're a little shorthanded, but that ability to just limit or at least give guys, other teams, trouble shooting the three. I mean, that's what hurt them so bad last year. And to this point, it doesn't look like they've been able to fully address that in game situations.
Double M15 on the chat saying we came out weak on defense. Can't wait for MKG to play. That's another great point. Missed his second straight preseason game for personal reasons. After the game, Steve Clifford saying he's not sure when MKG will return. They practice today. Hopefully we'll get some updates on that. Nick, what did you see defensively from the Hornets in this one?
Just based on who they had to play, like they did the whole Marvin at the 3, Frank at the 4. It was kind of tough on Frank, just based on the matchup. Like he had to guard Tatum, who's a much quicker player.
That's trouble.
And you saw like there were so many instances where Frank was just not where he needed to be, and I think it's he just had trouble staying with them. So
yeah. I agree, Nick. Tough matchups, but there were also points in this game where he, just getting back in transition and having those sort of short, soft closeouts. Those are things that have to get shored up, because you can, if he's hitting his 3-point shot, you can understand he doesn't have the quickest feet. He was working on it this offseason, but it's obviously still not there. So he's got to lay off some of these quicker guys when he gets matched up against a Brown or a Tatum. He's got to lay off a little bit because if he plays them tight, he's going to get driven by. So you understand that. You take that. But these transition opportunities that he was giving up last night, I think, were frustrating to me and some of the other people that were watching.
How is he going to be able to guard some of those guys for real in the preseason? I mean, I just don't see it happening, especially if Tatum is going to be hitting threes, he's going to be lethal because his footwork is so good already. He's such a good offensive player still at this young age, just him specifically. But you mentioned Brown as well. The Celtics are littered with those type of guys. If Frank has to shift down on any given night and guard guys like that, I mean, it's going to be tough.
Well, he's got to start producing offensively.
He just does not have the foot speed and the quickness.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to start producing offensively to make up for the fact. It's the same as Monk. We're going to talk about Monk's defense in just 1 second, but because Clifford had some interesting things to say on that. But it's the same thing with Monk. If Monk's not out there scoring, 14, 17, 20 points, then all of a sudden the defense becomes what you want to talk about. So Frank, hopefully he can get back to the role that I think he was accustomed to and was wanting to thrive in off the bench, and gets more comfortable as the season goes on. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about Malik Monk because he had a fantastic game offensively, 21 points, a preseason high. Did take 18 shots. Again, he's a volume shooter. I mean, he wants to get his shots. He was scoring in a variety of different ways. Played well offensively, struggled a little bit on the defensive end. Here is Coach Clifford on Malik Monk.
When people say, he's a talented offensive player, he's a talented offensive player, that's a lot different than somebody saying he's a talented NBA player. And his goal needs to be that he's a good NBA player. He's a talented shot maker right now. But I like the way he is. I like the way he works. And, he can make shots.
Coach Clifford, always a straight shooter, basically laying it out that he is a talented offensive player right now. In order to be a talented NBA player, you have to be able to hold your own on defense. And right now, guys, what I saw, he was essentially getting knocked off his defensive path on every screen.
Yeah, that's something I noticed as well. We don't, we kind of try to. It gets minimized when he's playing well on the other end, because that's something we knew he could do and whatnot. And so it's, we're not quite as critical about the defensive side of the game, but it's going to be an issue once the regular season starts. I'm curious, and I'd love to see Stone get back before the preseason, because I think pairing him next to Monk in that second unit could be really interesting just for defensive matchup purposes. But they need like he needs to get better at defense, but you know, I think putting him around players who can defend a little bit better than him might be able to help with some matchup problems as well.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, it's always going to be a concern with Clifford and guys on his squad, the defensive end of the ball. But look who Monk is, in effect, replacing. I mean, it's Marco Bellinelli, right? I mean, at times last year on defense, it was laughable, the backdoor cuts that he was getting burned on and the missed assignments. So, I mean, if you're shown to be able to score the ball in this league on this team that is really void of shot makers minus Kemba, I think he's got to have some of those opportunities. Now, the first thing I saw looking at that stat sheet last night was, man, is he going to be able to get 18 shots a night? First inclination is no, but I mean, won't he? I mean, who else is going to get him?
Well, I don't think he – like, because a lot of those shots came in the fourth quarter when he was,
right.
It was basically like the third units against each other in a sense. I think he'll have I think, you know, when he plays in the second quarter, he'll have a pretty free reign to do what he wants. You know, I think he could get about 10 shots a game, but I mean, I do think right now they're just letting him go out there. They're letting them take these maybe ill-advised shots because it's great game tape. It's stuff they can go back and say, like, look, in this situation, you shot it, but look what else you could have done. And so this is
and there's some of those. There are definitely some of those on tape for sure.
Get him some shots.
Dale Curry, that's one of my favorite drops, by the way. The master, Dale Curry. We're going to talk about the broadcast team coming up.
Get him some shots.
Love it. Okay, so yes, Malik Monk played the backup point guard position with both Michael Carter-Williams and Julian Stone both out. Michael Carter-Williams doesn't look like he's going to be ready for the regular season opener. Clifford sounded more confident that Julian Stone could be available even for Friday's preseason game, and that would certainly be a welcome development for a team that is thin, very thin, in the backcourt. Also out of this game, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist for personal reasons. Dwayne Bacon gets the start. He got some valuable time with some of the veterans, as I said. He was remarked on by Steve Clifford as being steady with those starters. He was a perfect 4 of 4 from beyond the arc, but he said after the game that he's focusing on the defensive end.
I'm trying to, perfect the defensive side. I want to be one of the best two-way players to ever play the game. I feel like I got the offensive side, so, just keep getting better on defense, and I'll be fine. The
best two-way player to ever play the game, the greatest of all time.
I love it.
I'm telling you, man. Well, that's, one thing that I think has played into this whole idea that you touched on, Nick, of the rookies adapting early, is that they're just confident beyond belief.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I did not realize that 12 points, 4 of 8 shooting, but 4 of 4 from the 3-point line. I did not realize
they were wide. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Bacon, but they were wide open. It was shoot around. But listen, you got to knock him down, and he did it.
Yeah,
right.
There's some other guys that got looks that have less than 4 megs. We'll just say that.
That's right. Yeah, both Marvin Williams and Frank Kaminsky still trying to find that shooting touch. And again, I just want to caution. I really want to caution that it's you can look at shooting numbers in the preseason, but I don't think it matters. I really don't. I think you have to understand too that there's going to be a period between this last preseason game. They're going to have 5 days to get ready for that regular season opener. There's going to be a lot of practice, a lot more offense put in. I think the focus between now and the regular season is going to be on a lot of the mental aspects, the organizational aspects, the purpose of play aspects as they march towards that regular season opener on Wednesday.
Yeah, and to me, guys, especially some of the late game buckets, Nick, you mentioned, and maybe some of those shots that Bacon got too. I mean, Clifford's remarked on this in the preseason. A lot of that is just unorganized. I mean, some of those are just coming off of, especially with Monk and with that one-on-one stuff. So, stuff is going to tighten up, to your point, Doug.
The fourth quarter, Nick, looked like I coached a 5 and 6 year old basketball league, and you kind of it's like herding cats. You're just trying to get them to go. I mean, it looked like summer league. Not that they weren't playing like 5 or 6 year olds. It was just unorganized. They were just they were out there kind of freewheeling it, and you don't unless you're the Golden State Warriors and you just have massive amounts of individual talent, then you don't win by just improvising. It takes organization, it takes proper execution. Daniel saying, Bacon has reminded me a lot of Joe Johnson with his style of play. He definitely has that the drive and his pull-up from mid-range, the way he kicks his leg out, very reminiscent of old ISO Joe. And that's our good friend Justin Thomas from ESPN 730, who was helping me out on coverage last night. He has said the same thing. He calls him Baby Joe.
Really?
So I don't know if that nickname's gonna stick. I don't know if Dwayne would love that nickname, but Baby Joe was definitely playing well last night. And then quote here on the chat saying, hope Bacon doesn't get lost in the rotation when everyone gets healthy. Quote, I don't know when everyone's gonna get healthy.
Yeah.
It might be a while.
Yeah. To that point,
Uh-oh. We're losing David
he's
to
doing all
the
he
to
can
the
right
tubes.
now, and especially about focusing on the defensive end. You got me back.
I do. Say it again.
Are you sure?
Say it again. Say it again for the back pew. People in the back pew need to hear it.
I was just saying, I think Bacon is making a name for himself right now by concentrating on the defensive end. And look, those 4 for 4 from 3 do not hurt, because that wasn't exactly a strength of his in college. But if he can be a 3 and D guy, if he can guard a couple different guys, because clearly they need help guarding, quick athletic guys, he's going to be out there playing.
There's someone, I think Jeff Van Gundy said this about Tate, or it wasn't about Tatum, it was about Brown, but I think you can apply it to Bacon. His offense right now is opportunistic in that whatever shots come to him, because they're not going to be looking for him all the time. But when shots do come for him, if he can make them, that's going to just increase his value. Not only his defense is playing well, but if he has an offense, just at times that can get him some minutes.
I want to circle back to Monk and mention one more thing from Malik here, and I've got some video of it. He started his first couple of preseason games really focusing on shooting, getting open, but lately he's been really showing off that athleticism that really raised his ceiling and raised his potential. And here was one play where he pulled this off, and this was a nice setup here where you had him almost like he screens and then takes the dribble handoff and twists and turns and gets into the lane and fights through contact. He basically gets knocked to the ground, but still finishes that layup. So that was just one example. He had a couple of these where he's starting to get more brave in terms of penetrating and taking that contact and finding different ways to score. And that's what makes Malik Monk extremely exciting as an offensive player, is his versatility. He can catch it. He can create for himself. He can drive inside. He's got that athleticism. He almost had a massive lob dunk off a
Hendo lob.
Yeah, the Hendo lob play, and sort of got knocked off of it. I thought he got fouled. But yeah, he's showing some things.
Hey, what did you guys? Doug? Follow up on that. What did you guys think of his ability to create for others? Because I think that's still secondary at this point, and maybe that'll come. But certainly, this team without Batum needs other guys to do that. I thought he was fine as far as kind of, I don't know, captaining the offense, but he's definitely looking for himself to score, which, hey, might be it's probably the right move at this point. But as far as creating for others, I think that's still some room for improvement there, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you like about Malik Monk is that when he's playing with veterans on this team, he looks for others to score. And when he's at the end of the game, and when he is clearly the best player on the floor, he's taking over. Yep. Let's move on to Dwight Howard. He provided some of the only reliable offense in this game. The Hornets really struggling offensively in this one. He was 6 of 9 from the field. Nice. And he looked deft and athletic in the post. Horford had a real problem with him when he got physical. What did you guys see in Dwight Howard's offensive game?
It's such a, it obviously wasn't dominant, but I just love that option off the lob. I mean, we've talked about it already, but it's just, it's such a good thing to have. They've never had it, and I think he looks good enough offensively, not just on those options, but just overall that, especially now with Batum out, I think, just running a little bit more offense through him, I think can be an effective option.
Yeah, the bounce, man. I mean, that's what we were worried about those first couple of games, how he looked super rusty. But that athleticism has returned, I mean, as far as it can for a guy his age. So I was happy to see him get up and get some of those lobs, because the rest is going to come. I mean, he knows what he's doing out there, playing in this offense, playing for Clifford. and you wanted to make sure he still had a little bit of explosion. And we saw some of that last night, so that's a good sign.
And I think even if you were a little skeptical about, or a lot skeptical about Dwight Howard's offense, he's answered some of those criticisms in this preseason period. We'll have to see what he looks like when the games start counting. But I did ask Dwight last night after the game about those lob plays, something that Charlotte's not traditionally known for, getting him involved in those and the chemistry that it takes to build those. Here's what he had to say.
Well, we just got to learn how to play with each other. I think guys got to learn how to make that pass over the top, and they're learning. Kemba, he's still trying to learn. He's talked about it a couple times. Like, man, that was bad, but I'm working on it. And Frank and other guys are learning. But it's a process, and going through the process is going to be a lot of mistakes. But that's what we have to really be patient with each other. It's going to get frustrating because we all want to win. So sometimes we may get frustrated if passes don't work, stuff like that. But that's basketball.
Yeah, sometimes they don't work, but here's one where they did work. This was Kemba off the roll, and oh my goodness, that was a huge slam by Dwight. Dwight took him to Dwight House.
I go to the White House.
God, what a great soundbite.
I'm telling you.
I look forward to running that one.
I love it. I'm gonna every opportunity I can. I can't. I think Daniel may have had that idea. So Danny out there,
Shout out to Daniel.
Shout out to Daniel, and shout out if it wasn't Daniel, shout out to who it was, and chat us and tell me I'm wrong. Another thing I want to mention is that Kemba Walker had 6 assists in this one. Had it been a regular season game, if guys were locked into the offense and their shot, and he played in the fourth quarter, he could have easily had double-figure assist. And going back to those lob plays, I think they're going to open up a new statistical angle for him to raise his assists, something we talked about maybe needing to do to take that next step in terms of all-NBA candidacy. He passed up a clean mid-range look off a crossover step back, one that he normally would have taken 9 times out of 10 to lob it up to Howard. Didn't work, but you can see the wheels are starting to turn. And Dwight's right. They do have to learn to make this pass because it's not something that Kemba's done really all that often. I mean, I probably count on my hands the number of times he's thrown a lob play to one of the centers here. So, continuing to build that chemistry, that's what preseason is all about, and you could see that really develop into the regular season. Okay, I want to go to the chat one more time as we wrap this up. Double M15 saying Monk's step back is nice and that he's playing like Kemba did his first year as far as shooting first, but he can learn more and more to create for others. Good point there by Double M15. They were also running Kemba under the rim a lot. I thought he was making passing decisions from the baseline. I haven't seen him do that much in years past either. With Nick Batum out, I think he's going to have to find those creative ways to facilitate for others because Nick Batum will miss 6 to 8 weeks with that elbow injury. Final thoughts on this one, guys?
I think there is I think with a full strength squad, this could have been a little bit closer, at least throughout the game. And Kemba didn't really look that good offensively. We didn't really talk about that. I'm not saying it's an issue, but you can just see them. They're just trying, like I think you mentioned it earlier. They're experimenting right now, and so that's affecting how some of these sets run. It definitely affected Kemba because he's looking for the lob now rather than in last season he would have taken that all the way to the hoop, and he was pretty good at that. So it's a different thing. It's a different thing for him, but
it's a new option.
Yeah, David, I know you got to go. Real quick, final thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think for all the negatives and maybe all the nitpicking, especially for Monk, and there wasn't a lot of it, I think Nick was right on when he said it first. It's just nice to see, especially a Hornets rookie come out there and have a God-given gift to score and be able to do it, right? Like right out of the gate with very little, coaching or having to be coached up to be an offensive player or to make shots, right? I mean, he's got a gift for scoring. He loves to score. He wants to score. And so I think that is a different type of player than they've had in a long time. And I'm so glad Clifford used the term shot maker. He didn't really use it as a compliment as much, but that's which is classic Cliff.
Well, he did at least hedge it. He did at least hedge it by saying that Monk is a great worker in practice. He's a great practice player. And that's going to be key.
All that's good. all that's going to come along. So, I mean, I think it's just really exciting to see that young guy go out there and be able to do that. He's like 19 years old. I mean, this could be a big year for him. Yep.
All right, David, I know you got to go. Thanks so much, buddy.
Peace, dudes.
I want to read this comment because Daniel is like a segue guy because he's always like in my head. But this is a great comment here. He said, I believe this season will somewhat resemble Agent Dale Cooper's arc from season 3 of Twin Peaks. I can see us coming out of the gate looking like Dougie Jones, but eventually returning to form. Now, Nick, you're not. David just left. I'm so disappointed in myself for not getting this out before David left, because I know you haven't gotten into the Twin Peaks, right?
I've not gotten to season 3. Still lagging behind on season 2.
Well, okay. Well, so I no spoilers. Right. I won't spoil things for you or our audience, but basically what you have to know is Dougie Jones was kind of a slob and sort of a born loser. And Dale Cooper is sort of the opposite. He's strong. Right. He is the FBI. He is, your classic American hero, right? So that's what he's, Daniel's saying this start could be bumpy to the regular season, but they will return to form, especially after they get Nick Batum. And Clifford mentioned how odd it is that preseason is wrapping up already. Teams are still playing deep reserves late in games. It's sort of a catch-22 because if you play your starters a lot, you can't practice as much, and practice is where you get good at the stuff you want to execute in games, but you have to get that stuff into game situations to see if you're any good at those things. I think when you combine that with the injuries that the Hornets have suffered this preseason, the Hornets could be, I actually wrote, bumpy ride in the early going. It could look more like the first half of this game than the second half of this game. And honestly, it could look like that for a lot of teams. Clifford said he talked to Brad Stevens about it before the game, that this early preseason has really set some dominoes that maybe the NBA wasn't anticipating in terms of the ability of teams to get ready for the opening of the regular season. So we're going to have to see, Nick. We could see some wild scores, maybe a lot of blowouts, as talent starts to overcome the ability for teams to really have all of their offense and defense ready to go for game one.
Yeah, and there could end up being like a few more like weird starts from teams. Like you remember like what was the season the Bobcats started actually pretty good, and everyone was like, oh man, like maybe we're gonna be all right this year, and then they just fell apart.
Yeah.
And I think I saw Philadelphia had a good start a few years ago and they ended up being really bad. So you could maybe Brooklyn and the Chicago have these like really good starts because like they're just weird. They get the right matchups and everything like that. So yeah, I expect things to not be as expected because nothing about this off season was normal. I mean, 7 All-Stars moving to new teams.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even counting the guys who were all-stars in the past. I mean, like Dwight Howard was probably the 15th most like important or prominent like trade or this off season. So yeah, I the Hornets might start slow. I think we have to prepare ourselves for that, and if that happens, we can't freak out.
Very true. Very true. Oh, wait, well, hold on. We definitely will freak out, but we shouldn't, and we eventually will be proven wrong for that freak out, I think. I think a lot of teams are going to look very different at the beginning than they will at the end of the season. Okay, this was such an interesting game for a lot of reasons that we've gone over on our time, but I did promise to talk about this broadcast team shakeup, so we'll mention it briefly, maybe give some brief thoughts, and then we'll kick this to tomorrow's show for some deeper analysis because I'm interested to hear what David has to say on this as well. So the Hornets television broadcast team will see some changes this season. Rick Bonnell from the Charlotte Observer reports that analyst Stephanie Reddy will work from the floor this season. Last season, she was with Eric Collins and Del Curry in the main media row, which sits 2 rows up from the top of the first level, so pretty high up in terms of media rows around the NBA. She will continue to do in-game analysis and host a pregame show. The people at Fox Sports are chalking the move up to the difficulty of doing TV coverage from the current high vantage point. So basically wanting to get someone on the floor to ask coaches about injuries and whatnot. But I think you could certainly, I think it's fair to see this as, we'll have to kind of see how it shakes out and what it looks like in practice, but it sort of looks like they're moving Stephanie Reddy back to sideline reporter duties. What do you think about this move, Nick?
That certainly could end up being the case. And what I'm trying to read into this until because it doesn't sound like just based on what they said, they're like, this isn't sideline reporting.
Yeah.
It almost to me sounds like, they mentioned that they're too high up. I think the three of them together got a little congested. And so maybe they're thinking, okay, we bring Stephanie down to the sideline. She's been there before. She can still chime in throughout the game. So, it could be a thing where, they're talking about a point and then Eric says, Stephanie, what do you think? And then they'll just jump to her and she'll just, offer her analysis like she normally does.
The three-person booth is really, really tough to navigate. And that's why you don't see them very often. And I think congested, Nick, was the perfect word for it because it's tough to figure out, okay, who's talking on this point? I mean, we do this kind of casually, and it can be tough to kind of navigate those waters. So I think you're dead on there, and I think we do have to see it in practice before we make too many judgments. But with all the attention that they got last season for Stephanie Reddy being one of the breaking barriers essentially as a female color analyst, to then the next season, if it does end up being like a sideline gig, then I think they're going to face some criticism, and I think it would be fair criticism. But again, we have to see. So we're going to talk. I want to talk deeper about this tomorrow, but we have run over our time. Also, just want to mention this real quick. Matt Carroll, former Bobcats wing, who's been on the show, friend of the show, he's going to be added to pre- and post-game coverage as well. He currently serves as the color analyst for Hornets radio coverage. So Matt's a smart guy. That's a good move. Matt knows basketball. He likes to talk about the inside basketball, so we're all for adding more of that to an already smart. I think that the Hornets have one of the smartest basketball crews in the NBA, and they talk about kind of the inside guts. Curry played, and Steph Reddy coached and has played, so you get all of that kind of inside basketball stuff that we love. Dwayne saying Stephanie was awesome as an analyst, and Dwayne, I think you're very, very right, and I hope that Fox, has her more involved than a sideline reporter, Nick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She was great last year, and I just hope this is not what we're all fearing it might be, and that she actually still is providing, the in-game analysis like she was last year, just from a different point of view. That's all I'm hoping this turns out to be.
All right, we'll get Dave's point of view on this tomorrow, plus some refereeing changes. We're going to go over those. Points of emphasis, they always come out around this time of year. Some interesting things that the referees will be looking at, and they've already started looking at, and it's affected preseason games, including all of these travel calls. So we'll take you through that tomorrow, as well as a preview of Friday night's game against the Dallas Mavericks. We'll have all of that for you here on Locked On Hornets. This is the best coverage we've ever done. I mean, this game coverage is killer, so you want to subscribe to this podcast. You want to tell your friends that love the Hornets, that want to get smarter about the Hornets. They've got to join Locked On Hornets, myself, Nick, Claire, David, Steve Bob. If you want some cool gear on eBay, he's going to be back with that next week, hopefully. So thank you so much for listening and supporting us supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/LOH. Get signed up there so you can get some free tickets to games this season and other giveaways. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Subscribe to us on iTunes. See if I can get this ending music going here. There we go. Shoot us your Hornets questions and thoughts to BuzzBuzz at LockedOnHornets.com, or you can send them to Twitter at Locked On Hornets. We're back again tomorrow. For David and Nick, I'm Doug. Go Hornets. Go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.